is my home.
There's a difference between sexuality and queerness.
I think it's really easy for people to group other people together and say that, well, this is what they all think, and just assume that that's how everybody is.
Everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it, we just feel like we don't have the means.
Do you see a difference between being homosexual and being queer?
Waiting on the world to change.
People ask, one of the first things they ask when you meet you is like, what do you do? As a way to like label you.
It's hard to be the system.
You're free to do what you want, more or less. I've never had to deal with like face-to-face homophobia.
I think it's interesting because I think there's a difference between sexuality and queerness. So I don't know if I would consider myself as much queer as homosexual. I think I would say less so queer.
For me personally, well, I personally adhere to gay as in homosexuality. I've learned that queer can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so I think it's difficult to try and define it because that's almost what it is. It's almost a non-definition in that people can use that as their identity, and that has such a wide spectrum.
My identity, I don't really identify by any specific label. I just kind of think of myself as me, and I think identifying by a label would kind of put me in a position where I'd have to be defined by something outside of myself, and I don't necessarily like to be confined by that. And I think that other people's experiences of me are reflective of who I am as a person, as opposed to I guess labels of any sort.
Queer has a lot more to do with like gender expression. For me, I am homosexual, but that doesn't matter to anybody else, whereas like queer is more outward. It's more about interacting with people, and it's more about like how society perceives you.
I don't know. I think I'd be more closely related to what somebody might call asexual. About my sexuality, I would say that I was actually speaking to somebody about this recently. I would say I'm hetero-appreciative. I personally wouldn't call it a form of queerness, but I think it could definitely be seen that way because of the fact that I'm not part of a mainstream group. I think, different people identify however they may want, and I think that definitely speaks to who they are as a person. Because, they identify with the group for a specific reason because they see some part of themselves in that group. And, I don't know, I think that's important for other people, but for me, I think, I don't know, I just kind of look at it differently. But, me having a different way of identifying myself hasn't necessarily made me feel in any odd way.
Visibility of my sexuality or homosexuality, I think, is quite visible. I don't generally preface a conversation with being gay, but I think just my personality, it's become a part of my personality, and it's not something that I'm trying to hide. And so it's quite apparent at times. I will say at Dartmouth, I'm more comfortable just embracing it. I will say that I came from the South, and so I have gotten used to somewhat repressing certain aspects of my personality, but I don't feel I do that here.
I think I do feel visible in the Dartmouth community, and I think in a couple interesting ways. I think one, my sexuality makes me visible because, or it's sometimes my sexuality precedes me and people knowing me, and sometimes it's not like a form of gossip, but it seems that a lot more people know me than I know them because of that.
I feel very comfortable. But there's always that thing in the back of your mind that says, oh, there's so and so, I wonder if he or she feels I wonder how he or she feels about, me being part of the LGBTQ community.
So people are like really accepting.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's due to the fact that, like, because I don't identify by anything and I'm not, in any particular group or trying to isolate myself, I just kind of do my thing. I don't know.
For me, it has not been hard to be out here. It's actually been remarkably easy. Very specific time. My girlfriend and I we had just gone to some big talk about gay. It was this big gay talk in college. Like, of course, it was in college, the gay hub of the world. There's like college common ground, this big talk. We walked out of there. We were walking across the green. We were both really like wow, like I'm really proud of Dartmouth. Like that was a really good talk, blah blah. Holding hands, walking by, and this truck full of guys comes up and just yells, "Dykes!" Like right in the moment, we were like, "This is so great." So like that was hilarious. We couldn't do anything but like laugh for a long time. So you think that you've come a long way, and then like you're cruising around.
Over winter break last year, one of my friends goes to Denver University, and she was talking with someone who's like, talking with someone whose sister goes to Dartmouth also and is just 16, and my friend Catherine was like, oh, like, ask your sister if she knows David Cook, and this girl was like, oh yeah, like, David Cook. She says like, oh, David Cook, like the gay one? Oh yeah, I know him pretty well. And like, I had no idea who this person was. Like, my friend Catherine was like, oh, like, blah, 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 girl says she knows you. And I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. So the fact that she was like, oh, the gay one, is like, it was kind of unnerving, because it's like, okay, like, that, I guess my reputation, like, gets around, or that people know, like, that about me. And I don't even know why that would be something that, like, a lot of people would know, or like why a lot of people would know me because of that. But it was just very interesting that like this random person was like associating themselves with me just because they knew my sexual orientation.
We'll use it as an identifier because, I mean, everyone likes to say that they're cool with gay people, and so when you're able to spot one out and be friends with them, you can have that satisfaction of, I'm friends with a gay person, therefore I'm liberal, or I'm cool. Look at me be so cool with him hooking up with his boyfriend or whatnot in our frat basement. It's almost as though you can then use me to fulfill some sort of quota that you have internally.
There's a difference between living closeted and out, period. I mean, the moment that people know that you are different in some way, whether you're lesbian, gay, bi, transsexual, whatever, people are going to like begin to look at you differently. I think there's a pressure to normalize yourself, to fit in with what's going on around you, to fit in with every aspect of Dartmouth.
Generally speaking, I only really share that type of information with like my friends or people that I know that I could talk to openly about that. But it's not even because I'm trying to hide it. It's just because why would I want to engage that type of energy that I know that I won't even really be able to change if I wanted to? You know what I mean? I just don't think it's worth it because of it.
So people are like really accepting.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's due to the fact that like because I don't identify by anything and I'm not, in any particular group or trying to isolate myself, I just kind of do my thing.
It does put you in a small group that's very visible, and it's very easy to be grouped together or talked about in a collective sense. I realized this just again yesterday. I was on Board at Baker, which I do every couple months when I get really bored. And so on it, there was a gay 16 who was closeted, and this was, I guess, a couple weeks old, and he was asking about where he should rush. And someone said, are you out, or are you visibly gay? And he said, no, I'm not one of those openly visible FaceTimey gay 16s that you see all the time. And I knew immediately who he was referring to. And so in that capacity, I don't really appreciate it, because it's using a part of my personality that it took me years to become this confident in who I am, but using it in a way against me, I guess, in that they're able to segment me off. And so I think it splits both ways, in that it's helped me be more visible so that you can find other gays like yourself, but then again, you're also more identifiable in that everything you do or say, it's very easy for people to point you out.
A lot of the idea of visibility is more what you think, how visible you think you are versus how visible you really are. Because a lot of times it just doesn't fucking matter. Like, it really just does not matter. A, how much visibility you think you have, but really how much visibility you really have. Because what does that even mean, to like be visible on campus? Unless you are like working towards like a cause or like fighting for something. And in that regard, like, having visibility is helpful in terms of getting the word out, but just having visibility to be visible, it's like, there's no point to it.
I think it's really easy for people to group other people together and say that, you know, well, this is what they all think, and just assume that that's how everybody is. But I think personally that everybody's so different, and everybody has their own values and things that they, I don't know, like to talk about or think about, or things that they have issues with, and like I think it's just so, like, it just varies so much. I don't know what answers people are looking for.
Like, that's sometimes how society works. Like, if you want to, of course, if you want to construct a movement, or if you want to have a group of people come together to fight for one cause, like, you're going to have people that don't agree with you and yet have the same societal labels as you. So the question is how to rectify those differences and move forward, and I don't think that's done the best at Dartmouth.
So this term I'm unaffiliated, and that was very difficult. Closer with their new brothers and sisters in the house, and with that, I think people sometimes will lose sight of some of the friendships they had before, or won't devote as much time to them as they had before. But because so many people are doing it at the same time, it's almost this implicit understanding that that's what happens. But for me, who was not a part of this process, it's almost as though everyone kind of just turned around, and it was very difficult to try and interface with a lot of my friends or get lunch with them, because they had to eat at a certain place or eat with a certain group of people. So there were some low moments at the beginning of this term. So it was very difficult, especially going from being a freshman who was easily identified as being gay and feeling socially included and having that social mobility and capital, to then being put on the outside of things, and it wasn't necessarily even my choice.
I don't know, it was really interesting joining a fraternity this fall with, like, basically I was hanging out all the time with this group of 30 guys, and like that was the first time where I'd ever hung out in a group of that many guys, like, all the time. And it was like everybody was like totally comfortable with it, but it's also never mentioned. It was like, oh, like, it was always like, oh, like, blah blah, you hook up with a girl last night, like, oh yeah, I brought her home, like, and it was like, well, yeah, I brought a guy home too, but like nobody would ever ask me that question, because they maybe thought it was uncomfortable for me to talk about, or like that's not, like, that acceptance meant silence in terms of me talking about like my sex life. I told them a couple weeks in, I was like, it should be completely the opposite. Like, you should be able to ask me or talk to me about like anything that happened in my life just as much as you should be able to talk to anybody else. And like, in feeling that, like, that's the biggest way you can be comfortable about it, is by talking about it. And so I think sometimes, like, in that regard, like, a lot of people are comfortable with it, but they just don't know what, like, I guess the acceptable means of talking about it is. So I had quite a few people come up to me afterwards and be like, wow, like, I never thought about it like that, you know? Like, I always thought that, like, that showing somebody that I'm okay with it was like me not talking about it at all, which I think sometimes happens too often.
Here at Dartmouth, there are so few openly or confidently open gay individuals on campus, there is truly a deficit. And with that, it becomes very difficult to try and have that same college experience that your heterosexual friends do, where they go out to frat basements and they just can hook up with someone and it be fine the next day. But for me, almost, if you were to do that, that's one out of a finite number of people that you will have a different kind of relationship with, for better, for worse, and that thus limits the amount of people you have left to have a relationship or to hook up with. So in some regards, you have to be strategic, and that's also assuming that you can get those people. The reality is you can only get a certain percentage of mutual attraction, so it really dwindles down your ability to experiment and have those kinds of experiences. So that with that comes this, I wouldn't say depression, but this sadness, this realization that it's very possible that you might not graduate without having had a fulfilling love experience. And that's so ingrained in the American culture of your college experience and finding your soulmate during your college experience. But for me, I've had to become increasingly comfortable with the idea that I won't find that person until after college and well into my professional life.
I feel comfortable here because it's a space where things are very slowly but surely beginning to change. I think if they weren't changing, I'd probably feel uncomfortable.
What do you believe promotes that change on campus?
Definitely the voices of the students in conjunction with whatever the administration wants to do, with that. I definitely think, for example, the protests that they did during Dimensions last year were really powerful. Although, I have my own views about how they were done and how it could have been done differently. I think that the message was definitely gotten across, and the administration tried to respond to them. I mean, I think that there are ways or maybe even systems that we create or whatever to make it so that the students and the administration can work a little bit more closely together so that they could make a little bit more progress. But I think as of right now, we're moving in the right direction.
Dartmouth is my home. And so with that, I take ownership over my experience, and I feel comfortable basically saying, I'm going to be myself, and I'm not going to let this group of people or this campus vibe or whatnot hold me back from being who I want to be.